They call it residential character. But what they mean is obedience. The moment Beatrice slapped that orange violation notice onto David's wall, unauthorized religious assembly, a line was crossed. Not because of the fine, not because of the law, but because it exposed the system's real face. A sanitized dictatorship disguised as community care. A system designed not to protect, but to condition. Every rule, every letter, every concerned neighbor report. It's all part of the same architecture of silent submission. You think it's just a homeowners association? Look deeper. HOAs are legal entities with quasi-governmental power. They write laws, enforce punishments, bypass public accountability, and they operate in a shadow space, private, but with the reach of a state. It's soft tyranny administered with a smile. And it works, because they've trained you to confuse comfort with control. And here's the sick genius of it. They don't even need to win. They just need you to give up, to stop hosting the prayer group, to not challenge the fine, to say, it's not worth the fight. That's how authoritarianism takes root. Not with violence, but with exhaustion. David saw it happening. Friends began dropping out. A few fearful words here. A silent exit there. They were good people, just scared. Because the deeper truth is, most of us are still trying to survive inside systems designed to break our spirits slowly, not suddenly. But David didn't bend. He watched the pattern. The anonymous complaints. The rule citations that didn't exist. He saw the illusion. That the HOA wasn't protecting the neighborhood. It was performing dominance. A ritual of paperwork and whispers meant to assert, we own this space, not you. And so he made his move, not with rage, but with precision. He picked up the phone, and the past came full circle. Because 15 years earlier, when he was fresh outta. The first knock was soft, the second shattered the silence, but it was the third that sounded like a warning. A coded signal whispered through decades of suburban control. They told you suburbia was safe, that it was built for peace, privacy, community, but they lied. Behind every white fence is a war no one talks about. A war for the soul of the American man. Not with guns or flags, but clipboards, fines, and power disguised as order. In Oakdale Heights, that war came knocking on a quiet Thursday night, wrapped in legal jargon and fake smiles. A woman named Beatrice Holloway carried it with her, HOA President, enforcer of the neighborhood atmosphere. But this wasn't about the rules. It was about ritual, control, surveillance masked as concern. And when David Morrison opened the door, Beatrice didn't just step into his home. She stepped into a power struggle older than most know how to recognize. Because every HOA board is a miniature echo of something darker. It's not about parking spots or lawn decor. It's about obedience. A test of how much you'll take before you stand up and say, no. That Thursday, David's small prayer group, a quiet mix of faith and fellowship, became an act of rebellion. No loudspeakers, no protests, just belief. And that was the threat. You see, tyrants don't fear chaos. They fear order that isn't theirs. This wasn't just a neighbor gone mad with authority. It was a glimpse into the machinery behind comfort. The HOA system, a microcosm of institutional overreach, where power flows through bylaws, intimidation, and silence. Every suburban street is a pressure valve, and Beatrice knew how to tighten the screws. Fake violations, empty threats, bureaucratic fear. But what she didn't know, what people like her never expect, is that some men remember the old ways. That under the layers of pleasantries and polite society, some of us are whack. The Thursday after that call wasn't just another prayer night. It was a battlefield disguised as a living room. The sun dipped low over Oakdale Heights, washing every window in gold like the calm before a storm. Inside David's home, only 5 people remained, 5 who hadn't been broken by fear. The coffee was poured, the chairs were set, but every breath in that room felt heavy, charged. And then they heard it. Click, click, click. Beatrice's heels, echoing like a metronome of control up the front path. She didn't knock. She never knocked. Tyrants don't ask permission. They assume ownership. She burst through the door, clutching another fine, this time for $1,000. This time, she brought the storm. But she didn't see the trap. Because in David's favorite armchair, sipping tea as if the entire HOA board wasn't at war with this house, sat Mayor Robert Chen, calm, composed, dangerous in the way only quiet men in positions of real power can be. When he stood, it wasn't loud, but it shifted the room. The ground underneath Beatrice's rules cracked. He welcomed her, kindly, respectfully, but with weight in every syllable. And then he dropped it, the New City Initiative, a policy written to protect gatherings like this one, to remind every HOA in the city that their bylaws cannot override constitutional rights. That religious freedom isn't up for debate, not here, not anywhere. Beatrice didn't speak. Her lips moved, but the words fell apart before they formed. The notice slipped from her fingers. The sound it made as it hit the floor was quiet, but final. Because that was the moment the spell broke. HOAs only hold power because people believe they do, because no one questions the theater. But when a real authority walks into the playhouse, the actors scatter. And Beatrice? She realized she wasn't the lead character. She was the cautionary tale. Robert didn't. The day after the mayor's visit, Oakdale Heights woke up different. It wasn't loud. There were no fireworks, no rallies, just whispers spreading fast like smoke through dry brush. Did you hear what happened at David's place? The mayor himself? She just stood there, said nothing. The myth of Beatrice Holloway, keeper of the codes, queen of compliance, was crumbling. For 3 years, she'd ruled not with leadership, but with fear. Not fear of violence, fear of isolation. Because that's how these systems work. They don't just find your lawn, they find your voice. They make you believe that speaking out will cost you more than staying silent. But the moment she stood frozen in David's doorway, stripped of her perceived authority, people woke up. Tom and Linda Garrison came back to the prayer group. So did the Patels. A few new faces, too. People who had once nodded nervously at HOA meetings, now showing up with covered dishes and open eyes. For the first time in years, neighbors weren't just existing side by side. They were connecting, talking, sharing stories of fines that never made sense, rules that seemed to shift depending on who you were. And that's when the dam broke. At the next HOA meeting, the community room overflowed. Usually a dozen people showed up. This time, it was 63. Beatrice took her seat like usual, but something was different. Her hands trembled. Her smile was brittle. Because she could feel it, the shift in energy. Authority doesn't live in a title. It lives in consent. And that room was no longer hers. Harold Finch stood up. The same Harold who had flanked her like a loyal hound just weeks ago. But now, his voice was steady. He motioned for new board elections. Janet Cooper seconded it immediately. For a moment, Beatrice tried to push back. Procedures, timelines, legal jargon, but it was already too late. The community had learned. Beatrice Holloway didn't just lose a vote. She lost the spell, because that's what tyrants cast. Not rules, not governance, but spells. Delusions of order, fantasies of authority. They build entire realities on fear, compliance, and isolation. And when those illusions fracture, they don't break clean. They shatter, ugly, loud, permanent. 2 weeks after that meeting, Harold Finch was sworn in as the new HOA President. His platform? Simple: reason, transparency, respect. He didn't come in with vengeance, he came in with clarity. His first act? Publicly voiding all fines Beatrice had issued to David. His second? Featuring David's prayer group in the community newsletter as a model of unity. It was poetic. The same gathering once labeled a threat now held up as a symbol of healing. But the transformation wasn't limited to Oakdale Heights. Beatrice had a job downtown, a paralegal at one of the city's most prestigious law firms. She'd always bragged about it, dropped it in conversations like a badge of superiority. But word spreads, and when that word includes the mayor personally intervening in a constitutional violation, firms pay attention. She was let go, quietly, no headlines, just an HR meeting, a short walk to the elevator, and a severance check signed with polite finality. They called it downsizing. But everyone knew better. And then came the final turn, the one most people never see coming. David didn't pursue revenge. He pursued justice, through proper channels. A civil rights attorney friend helped file a harassment suit, not to get rich, but to create a record, to document the abuse of power. The case was settled out of court, $10,000 in legal fees and damages. But more important than the money was what came next, a public apology. Beatrice was required to submit it to the community newsletter. Her words were hollow, clipped, and clearly writ, 10 by a lawyer, but they were there, in black and white, a confession from the high priestess of control. And just like that, the era of fear in Oakdale Heights ended, not with violence or rebellion, but with the power of clarity. Because when men stop fearing the consequences of speaking, tyrants lose their oxygen. And you, if you're still watching, know this truth. The war for your mind is waged in silence. Break it. You were never supposed to hear this. Not because it's illegal, but because it's dangerous. Dangerous to those who rely on your ignorance, who build quiet kingdoms inside institutions, layering rules atop rituals until freedom becomes a whisper you barely remember. But now, you remember. Because what happened in Oakdale Heights is not rare. It's not isolated. It's a blueprint. HOAs, school boards, workplace policies, even your digital platforms. Systems built not to serve, but to shape, to mold your behavior, to strip away autonomy piece by piece, until what remains is a domesticated man convinced his leash is protection. But every once in a while, someone breaks pattern. David didn't scream. He didn't riot. He didn't become what he hated. He became something far more dangerous. Awake. He studied the system, found its weak points, and used truth, connections, and law like weapons forged in silence. The moment Mayor Chen stepped into that living room, David didn't just win a skirmish. He cracked the architecture of control itself, showing his neighbors, his city, you, that institutional power can be challenged if you're willing to see clearly and move intentionally. This is not just about HOAs. It's about the deep programming of a society that rewards silence and punishes sovereignty. A society where men are taught to stay small, to comply, to adapt instead of lead. Where strength is confused with aggression and peace is mistaken for passivity. But you're not here by accident. You're here because some part of you remembers the old fire, the one that doesn't bow, the one that doesn't beg, the one that doesn't wait for permission. And if you've made it this far, it's time to lock it in. Go to the comments right now. Write this twice. I do not consent to silent control. I do not consent to silent control. Let them feel the algorithm shift. Because this isn't just a story, it's a signal. A warning flare to the watchers, a call to the quiet warriors, a message from the other side of the veil. They don't win when they write the rules. They win when you stop asking questions. So ask, push, resist the subtle slavery of small tyrants in big chairs. And when they come for your voice, your gathering, your fire, don't fight them with rage. Fight them with clarity. Because the most dangerous man in the system is the one who sees through it. Now tell me, what system are you about to break?